Welcome to another corset tutorial. I think corsets are becoming my thing now. I do have one that I've done previously on my channel. It's a blue velvet corset, so you can check that out if you are interested. But focusing on this one, it's going to be more intricate, more intermediate. So if you're someone that's looking to level up your sewing, this project is perfect for you. You can follow along and get inspiration. I'm not going to explain every single technique because there's some things, if you're more intermediate, I will assume that you know. But this one is going to talk more about, boning. It's going to have a lace trim, and the way I lace up the back of my corset as well is different. So do follow along. And for those who don't know who I am, my name is Tammy. I teach people how to sew online and make clothes. So if you're interested in fashion and crafting, do make sure you subscribe to my channel to get notified for more videos. I'm going to play everything in double speed just because it actually just takes quite long to draft the pattern. So here I have a previous pattern that I've worked on already. It's in my blue velvet corset tutorial if you want to see that process. So I'm just adjusting it. I'm adjusting the length, so making the corset longer, and I'm making it wider at the hips as well. So that's why I'm just putting it onto a new piece of pattern paper. And yeah, it's quite fiddly. I'm using pattern weights to hold it down. And this is often how I work on my patterns. I, initially build something from scratch. Then as I sew over time, if I need to adjust or tweak something because I want a slightly different design, I will build on an existing pattern. And yeah, I just find it easier. So this is what the final pattern looks like. And I'm now cutting out my pattern pieces. I've numbered them as well so that I know which pieces go together and I can keep track of everything. Here I have a woven interfacing that I'm attaching to my main fabric. So this interfacing it acts more like fabric, and when you attach it to your main fabric, it's not going to have that stiffness that regular interfacing would have, and it's a bit more breathable. So I prefer to use this one. I've attached it before I've cut my fabric. So now I'm cutting out my fabric. I tend not to put pins through my patterns because I use my patterns a lot, and if I'm constantly putting holes in it, it just kind of deteriorates over time. I'm sewing all my main fabric pieces now. I've put everything right sides together. I think I have about 4 or 5 panels that I need to sew. So I've just used my pins to make sure the top and bottom match correctly. Pressing is such an important aspect of sewing. That's what gives you the clean finish, so don't miss this step. There's going to be a lot of pressing in this project, and here I'm opening all my seams, and this will later form the channels that I'm going to use to put my boning through as well. I've sewn the front of my corset together and I've sewn the back of my corset together. So now I'm pinning it at the side seams. I'm going to take it to my machine and sew it together. This is my lining fabric. It is Duchess satin, and it's a thick satin that has no stretch to it, and it's quite similar to my main fabric in the sense that my main fabric has no stretch. So if you're doing a corset and you want to line it as well, find a lining fabric that works in the same way so that it's going to make it easier for you to match up the seams when you need to. And I just find that because of the thickness of Duchess satin, it really adds that shape and stability that the corset needs. You don't want to get a flimsy, really light fabric when you're sewing something as structured as a corset, which is going to be pulling a lot because you need it to be, very tight and fitted. So the fabric needs to be strong to sustain the use of that garment. I'm sewing my lining fabric right sides together. For Duchess satin, the shiny side, so the side that has a bit of a sheen to it, is the right side, and the matte side is the wrong side. But it's up to you, and it's up to your personal preference which side you would like to use. But for this project, I'm using the shiny side as the right side of my fabric. And again, the most important step is to press. So I'm pressing open every single seam that I've sewn so it will match my main fabric, which I've also pressed. I've pinned my main fabric to my lining fabric just to make sure all the seams match up. Now I need to take it to my sewing machine and sew those two pieces together. But first, I am going to add my lace trim onto the main fabric of my corset. I'm not using pins here because I do find they can be quite fiddly, especially when working with delicate trim. So I'm just using my hand to guide it along and taking into account the sewing allowance. Now I'm sewing the right side of my main fabric to the right side of my lining fabric with the lace trim sandwiched in between. Here I'm just pressing it, and once I've attached my boning, I think that will be enough to secure the lining in place. This is what the lace trim looks like. It looks super neat, very pretty, and it's just a really nice accent as well to highlight the top of the corset. That's what the back looks like with the lining. Now time to sew in the corset busk. So I'm just using my pencil to mark where the openings will be. Then I'll take it to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew right sides together and leave those gaps open so I can insert this part of the busk into my corset. I'm taking my corset to my sewing machine and using a zipper foot to sew my corset busk in place, and this foot will allow my needle to get as close as I can to the busk, so it just makes sure it secures it very tightly in, creating a very snug channel so the busk is not moving around. Next, which is the slightly scary part, is making sure it aligns, and as you can see, it fits in perfectly, so I'm really happy with that outcome. And this is me just roughly trying it on. It's a bit out of focus, but you can see it's taking shape. On to sewing my boning channels. So before this, I actually hand based the lining to my main fabric so that when I take it to the sewing machine, I don't have to pin it. Here, I'm just sewing everything. I've also used a ruler to mark the width of my boning channel, which is 1 centimeter. I have sewed all my boning channels. Now I'm inserting my actual boning inside just to make sure it fits, which it does. Moving on to the hem. So here it's basically bias tape, but I've used my main fabric to do this. You can finish your corset with bias tape. You can make bias tape out of your own fabric. With corsets, the seams can get quite bulky. Here I've got my lining fabric, I've got my main fabric that I've interfaced, which is another layer, and I've also got the additional layers of the bias binding that I'm using to finish the hem. So I prefer to do this by hand so I can get a really clean, precise finish instead of it being really fiddly and messy on my sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm installing all my eyelets. This is actually my least favourite part of corsets. I find I don't know, it's just scary. There's no room for error because you basically finished the garment. So take your time with this one. If you need to do it on a practice garment first, I would advise that you do that just so that you make sure there's no accidents. The back of my corset is now ready to be laced up. All the eyelets are in place and everything aligns. This lace up technique is nothing new. You can find it very easily on YouTube or on the internet, but it is something that I've just come across recently. Here I'm using 2 separate pieces of lace, and the 2 pieces of lace is going to meet where the waist point is on the corset, so that when I pull on the 2 pieces of lace, it is going to tighten and cinch the corset in at the waist point, which is the area where you would want it to be the most fitted. This is the front of my corset, so I've just added an additional lacing detail. Here's an overview of the finished corset. The sewing busk at the front clips in and is aligned, which is great. This is the inside of the corset. The lining is done, the lacing is done, and that black tape is my waist tape that will just add additional support. With lacing up the corset myself, so I've put the corset together with the corset busk at the front. When I turn around, you can see that it's not tight yet. So I'm going to grab the 2 pieces of lace and pull them in opposite directions. And now that is going to tighten me up. It is a little bit tricky to do. It's a bit awkward with the hands. And I'm just, so just tie knot, tie a bow or whatever. And cinch it in as much as you like. And this is what the final piece looks like. I actually also forgot to mention that this is not my design. I found this online, I think it was on Pinterest, and it took me to a store that was selling similar to this design. I've used my own fabric to recreate it, and I've changed the lacing slightly, and it also has straps, I think, and I didn't add straps because I kind of just like the fit as a strapless garment. I will show the original somewhere and you can check that out. So just wanted to add that because I forgot. The corset is all done now and super happy with how it came out. This one was a bit tricky to do a tutorial slash vlog of because my sewing style is very fluid and I often change things as I go along. Even though I made a pattern for this one, there were things that I still adjusted, as I tried it on and saw how it was being constructed. Regardless, I hope you was able to follow it and hopefully learn some new techniques that will help you sew your own corset. It's always good to do a practice run first because it's so time consuming and technical to make a corset, and you don't want to spend all that time and effort and it doesn't fit right, or there's something about it that you don't like. Hopefully the lace up technique as well is useful. This is perfect for if you live alone and you want to sew up your, lace up your corset yourself. You basically do it up from the front first and then you lace it up from the back. If you have any questions about this tutorial, if you have any video suggestions of what you want to learn next, make sure to put it down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.